everything you just saw there, not only can you do, but you can do easily. And that's what we're gonna talk about in today's episode. So I'm glad you guys decided to tune in for today's episode. And I'm also really glad I'm out here and able to bring it to you guys. It is an absolutely beautiful day. It is so beautiful. The sun's out, it's warm, it's 80 degrees. You really cannot ask for a better day. So I'm having an awesome one. I hope you guys are as well. And I really do hope that wherever you're at, it's warm or soon to be warming so you can get out in the garden. But like I said, today's episode is going to be on how we get our lettuce to look this beautiful. Now, I am not by any means bragging, but I have to admit, my lettuce is gorgeous this year. It's probably some of the most beautiful lettuce we've ever grown. Now, a lot of times when we post pictures, people don't know the whole story, or maybe they're new to the channel and they'll send us a message or comment saying, Luke, how do you get your lettuce to look that beautiful? And I'll say, well, we've got videos on YouTube. And they say, well, I can't find which one. Can't you just film a new one? So we've also had people that comment comment on older videos that say, I'd really like kind of a recap, just kind of bring it all together. And so that's what we're gonna do today. I thought it'd be kind of fun because our lettuce looks absolutely incredible. And I wanted to drive the point home that you can do this as well. Starting lettuce happens in early spring. You can do this right now, even if it's not early spring, but you might just have a shorter season. And that's okay, that is perfectly fine. But lettuce does prefer cooler weather. So we start our lettuce as soon as we can. It's usually early March when we start our lettuce outside. We still have some threats of snow in the forecast. Usually it snows quite a few times before our lettuce really grows, but our seeds are in the ground so that as soon as they can germinate, they do. I don't really have any covering or protective stuff that I put over top of our lettuce because I just want them to grow naturally and as slowly as they can. And so I don't rush the process, I just let it happen. And usually I'll get sprouts in about 5 to 7 days. They might not grow that much in those 5 to 7 days, but that time when they first sprout to maybe when they get their first set of adult leaves is the most important part. Because when I seed in early spring, I don't hold back with my seeding. I do not worry about how densely they're sowed or the spacing between them. The only thing I worry about is the spacing between the rows. I space my rows out about 4 inches apart. And when I space my seeds, I pretty much just sprinkle them in. I say that my spacing, if I had to average it out, it's probably right around 1/4 to 1/2 inch of spacing between seed. And what happens is as those seeds germinate, they begin to grow, and the ones in rows will actually self-cull. Culling is a process of picking out the weakest one, basically. It's survival of the fittest. And we do that as gardeners in a process called thinning. But nature also does that in a process called survival of the fittest. And when you're talking about lettuce, lettuce is something that does it very well. And because the seeds, there's so many seeds, you're not going to have, you're really not going to miss those ones that die off. Then what's going to happen is because the strongest will survive, you have the ideal spacing between your plants without having to do anything. And then because you plant them 4 inches apart, what's going to happen is called self-supporting. This is what's so incredible, is if you leave lettuce to its own devices and you give it enough space, it will actually sit very low to the ground and take up a lot of space. A typical head of lettuce will take up about 1 foot to 1.5 square foot to 1.5 square feet of space in your garden. So 1.5 square feet of lettuce for one head. That's not that great when it comes to overall production. I mean, if you've got a farm and you got 10 acres to kill, well, great, plant it as far apart as you want. But when it comes to high intensity spacing, which is what we do, we need self-supporting. And what that does is it allows us to do a process called cut and come again, which we'll talk about later on in this episode. But what happens when they self-support is the leaves will touch each other because they're planted so closely together. The plant in this row and the plant in this row, the leaves overlap, and instead of just falling in on themselves, they actually push themselves up. And what that allows the plants to do is allows the plants to access sunlight. They won't compete for the sunlight because all the leaves are going straight up. And as the sun comes across the bed, it touches them all uniformly. Now, a lot of people ask us, Luke, don't they compete for nutrients? Aren't they stressed in any way, shape, or form? And the answer is, I mean, they haven't told me, but I would say no. They look great. They look absolutely great. And the reason why the root systems are not stressed or competing for anything is because roots, when they touch each other, rather than touching each other and just turning into a giant mass of roots, what happens is they touch each other and they go down. This is because plants, they're naturally competitive. They want to outcompete another plant. That's how they survive. So if a plant touches a plant root, chances are it already notices that there's less nutrients over there because that plant is already taking up those nutrients. So where does it go? The roots go down, because if there's no roots there, chances are there's nutrients there. And that's why we have to make sure that the soil is really loose, really well draining, and very, very fertile. We fertilize heavily in the spring. Right when we plant, we actually work that into the top 1 inch of soil. We put fresh compost down, we put fresh rock dust down, we put worm castings down, and we put trifecta down. And that allows us to have a very super nutrient dense planting bed that when the plants start growing, the roots can go straight down and they can follow the nutrients down through the soil as they go. And this way there's no competition for soil space because they're going down where no more roots are. And that is an awesome, awesome thing for you as a gardener because it allows you to grow way more plants. The amount of soil that's taken up is really just based on how fertile the soil is. I mean, you see plants growing in the cracks of sidewalks with teaspoons of soil. That's because they've grown to not need that many nutrients. And so the fertility is a direct correlation to how many plants you can have. So just remember that. The more fertile the soil, the more plants you're going to grow. The next thing we talk about all the time is when we water, because we rarely water these beds, but when we do, we deep water. Deep watering is very, very crucial. Because of the fact that we want the roots to continue going down in a bed like this, we don't want any competition for water and we don't want any competition for soil space. Those roots, their jobs are to find nutrients and find water. And if you surface water, that actually not only helps weed seeds sprout, but it also hurts the ability to grow high intensity like this because the roots are actually going to say, whoa, there's no water down here, but there is water up here. And they're all going to start trying to fight for that water. Whereas when you deep water, water gets sent down through the soil column and it's down there where the roots already are. And then as the roots grow, it says, well, it's still moist, it's still moist, it's still moist. And they don't ever hit any dry spots because you're deep watering. And then the final thing before we start harvesting is a question that we get asked all the time, which is, can I start from starts or can I start from seeds? With lettuce, if you start from a start and you have, say, a plug here and a plug here, no matter how hard you shove those two plugs together, there's still going to be soil in between those plants. And you're starting from a living plant rather than a seed, and those plants are going to compete because they're already sprouted, they're already growing, the root systems are already developed. And so you're going to have the competition for soil, you're going to have the competition for water, you're going to have the competition for sunlight, you're going to have the competition for space, you're going to have the competition for everything, and chances are both plants are going to be stressed at that point, and you really won't have that much success with it. The other thing that you're going to do is you're going to lack on your space because, again, we space our seeds out about 1/4 inch to 1/2 inch, and by the time they self-thin and kind of duke it out for the survival of the fittest, when they're small like that, they're at probably about 1 inch spacing. If you take a plug that's 1 inch by 2 inches and another plug that's 1 inch by 2 inches, you've got almost 4 inches of spacing between those plants. That's at the closest that you can possibly get. Just by cramming those plugs in, you're gonna have 3 to 4 inches of spacing. So our plants in these beds are 2 to 3 times closer than they would if you start from plugs. So that's why you really do have to start from seeds if you want them to look like, if you want your lettuce plants to look like ours. And I guess another final question that we get asked all the time is head lettuce or leaf lettuce? Which should I be growing? And the answer is, you'd be surprised, but we actually have both in this bed. You just would never know it because we're not growing to their full head. Every lettuce will grow leaves. That's what you're harvesting for. That's what you're eating are leaves. The head is just an aesthetic thing that allows you to, for iceberg, for instance, iceberg is known as a crisp head. And you're not going to get a crisp head in this bed here because there's not enough space for it to form a head. If you let it grow out to its full size and you have all the space, it'll form a head and that's fine. But you don't actually need to get a head to have lettuce. And the very last thing I want to do is I want to talk about cut and come again lettuce. So we're gonna cut our salad for our dinner and get in there and get some dinner made. But I want to cut our lettuce here because a lot of you have asked how we harvest our lettuce. So there's really no secret to it. It's pretty easy, but I'll bring you guys in so you can see how we do it. Because when you do cut and come again, the lettuce is allowed to regrow. And that is a wonderful thing for us as gardeners that aren't looking for the full heads of lettuce, because you can still sell this at market as like a loose leaf lettuce if you're a market grower, but as a home gardener, you're going to get way more harvest out of it. You're going to get way more yield out of a square foot, and that's kind of really the heart of high intensity gardening, is you're growing more food in less space. And so yeah, we're going to get probably 4 or 5 cuts out of this before it goes to bolt, before it goes to seed. Whereas if you grow it for a head, you have to grow that whole head out, and you're going to cut it and it's done. So you only get 1 harvest from a head. You get 4, 5, 6, 8 harvests depending on your season from cut and come again leaf style lettuce. So what we're going to do, because I'm going to harvest some of this Tango leaf lettuce here, is what we're going to do is we're going to grab with our hand, and we're going to simply position the knife right pretty much level with the bed here. Level with the bed being about 2 or 3 inches away from the soil surface. And we're just going to cut. Our knife is very, very sharp, so it does all the work for us. And there's all of our lettuce. As you can see, it's all loose leaf. And what that does is, because we've cut about 2 or 3 inches from soil surface, the center crown of the lettuce is allowed to regrow. And that's going to regrow all new leaves. They can then be recut. So that way it can keep growing. So we're just going to cut our bib lettuce here. Same way. Our soil is usually about 2 inches below the top of the raised bed for that reason, because if it was right at soil surface, you'd have to kind of guess where that's at. So by having raised beds with the soil slightly lower than the top of these raised beds, it allows us to keep it level and just cut right along. All right, and the last cut here, we don't need that much soil, or we don't need that much lettuce for our salad for tonight. So I think that's all I'm going to take there. But as you can see, we got ourselves a full bowl of lettuce, and we only cut from maybe 3 or 4 plants, maybe a square foot or so. That right there is about a square foot. Check that out. 1 square foot of lettuce, whole bowl. And it's going to regrow. In about a week, we're going to get this again from this exact same space. So there you go. I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope you learned something new. And as always, this is Luke from the MIgardener channel, reminding you to grow big or go home. Try growing lettuce this way. You will definitely not regret it. And let me know in the comments box below the results that you've had with it if you've tried it. All right, catch you guys later. See ya. Bye.